the 3 types of initiations a man can go through in order to develop his masculine essence. So many men nowadays, they see a lot of content on the internet about what it means to be a man in the modern day culture. And we see a lot of influences coming up from either, let's say, ex-warriors, veterans, ex-military dudes, buffed up guys, fitness influencers, or guys influencing us about generating wealth because that's the way to be a masculine man. And many of us, especially the sensitive souls who are on a different kind of path, who relate more to something of more meaning, of something more ancient, they see this and they say, okay, well, this is great, but I've already been through that, you know, what is the next stage for me? So let's talk about that, because this also really relates to the 4 archetypes of masculine energy according to Carl Jung. The first one is that of the warrior. Especially when we are a teenager, you know, when we are kids, we are really dependent, of course, on the influence of our upbringers, you know, the family members. So our parents, of course, you know, they influence us and they help us to form an identity. Now, sometimes we need to receive something, but when we don't receive it, it is more like it can create a very tiny little traumatic experience. It's not like a high-end traumatic experience like an accident or something like that is going to form us for the rest of the life, but things that should have happened that did not happen. A silent neglect, a silent rejection, a silent absence of a parent. We think, okay, it's okay, you know, but what we do, especially as young children, we form ourselves, you know, we feel unsafe, unworthy, or unlovable, or something like that, and this is going to form us for the rest of our life. Of the tiny little things that should have happened but did not happen. A recognition, a validation that should have happened but was not there. A father who was absent in his own way. A mother who was not there. Parents, a family who broke up. Or any other kind of situation. So as young children, this formed us a lot. This created a lot of our beliefs. Then as teenagers, we want to go out in the world. We want to form ourselves. We want to relate to our peers. But here's the thing, if we have all these things of, let's say, emotional neglect and things like that, we are there as teenagers, feeling somewhat like really strange to our peers, to our outside world. We start to be unable to socially relate. We become withdraw a lot. But what happens? We take on this emotion and we turn it inward, which can turn into the shadow aspect of the warrior archetype. The emotions of maybe sadness, grief, doubts, unlovable, things like that. And what we do is we cover it up with a thick layer, you know, like an armor. We become cold, we become cold, we become distant. Also to our peers, to our social peers, we can't really seem to relate to them. Then this shadow aspect starts to turn inwards. And what it can happen, we become aggressive. We feel anger, we feel a lot of anger. And especially for young boys in our modern day culture, there's not so much of a place for that. And what happens, you easily get labeled ADHD or things like that, and you get, you know, you become already a little bit of a misfit, you know, because you have that, and it's not really recognized. Especially when I grew up in the 90s, it was a different story. So as teenagers, we already set a course of, you know what, I become a fighter, I become a warrior. This is the first, let's say, the part of initiation, because especially for us as young men, young boys growing into young men in tribal communities, in indigenous cultures, as a boy you had to go out there with the hunters and the warriors to prove yourself. To prove yourself, think about the movies like 300, and there are plenty of this type of movies. The young boy got outcast from the families, sent out into the wilderness to survive the wilderness, the elements, and to fight off wild predators, you know, to fight against the wolf, the bear, and etc. If you come back alive, you have proved yourself worthy to join the hunters and the warriors. So this is in the first aspect. Now, in my case, you know, because I was growing up in a lot of social unrest where I got exposed to lots of neglect, rejection, the absence of parents. So I already turned a lot inward of my emotions. I started to suppress a lot, and then I simply expressed myself through anger, aggression, and violence. So for me, as a 17-year-old, joining the Marine Corps was a pretty obvious thing to do. So yeah, as a 17-year-old, this is really what I wanted to do, you know, join the military. And I think a lot of young boys who have been through this kind of stage in life as a young child into teenage years, you know, growing up in dysfunctional families, this is the most obvious thing to do, you know, is to get out in the world through travel, adventure, is to prove yourself through physical effort, you know. This is a great way to get initiated. But I didn't follow this course. Instead, I followed another course that also a lot of other men are moving into, because eventually I wanted to prove myself through a lot of work. I became more of a workaholic. As I got into college, pretty soon I realized, okay, college is pretty chill. Apart from going into internships and sitting in an office the whole day, instead I started my first local business when I was around 20 years old. And this is another path a lot of young men are going into, especially when you are in your 20s. You know, you want to somewhat prove yourself through accomplishments, you know, receive the external validation through hard work and doing something. Do and have. This is the most important, you know, during this time. But this is the men who want to climb up the old school system of the patriarchy, you know, is to climb the hierarchy through gaining more status, you know, is to see themselves as an hardworking, successful man, entrepreneur, young professional who want to climb the hierarchy. Is to gain more status, external success, and through that we receive the validation, approval, etc. But through that, you know, this is kind of also what goes along with the warrior that becomes like the king. You know, the warrior fights for what he wants. He has focus, discipline, structure. He fights for justice and a lot of it. And then he slowly turned into a king when he starts to build a kingdom around him. Let it be a community and following, people who follow him. He steps into a role of leadership as an entrepreneur. He built a company, he has employees, things like that. This is the king energy. Now, with the king energy, there's also a shadow aspect, just like with the warrior. The warrior that doesn't really look after his emotions, turn inwards and become toxic for his environment. The king, who hasn't figured out his emotional well-being, he also becomes toxic by becoming, let's say, a dictator or turn into a tyranny. You know, he wants to boss people around. He's not a leader, he's a boss. And he wants to dominate, he wants to compete, he wants to manipulate, and he wants to use the people against his own favor. You know, he wants to get things out of people, you know. He has the people and he wants to suck his people dry. This is really what this is about. The healthy king, of course, is the healthy leader, you know, looking after his kingdom, after his community. Now, this is all well and fantastic, but then we hit another phase in our life, another initiation period. For me, this already started very, very young, at the age of 25, 26, when I realized, wait a minute, you know, what I am doing here, you know, I'm not really healthy here, I'm only in the doing so I can have more. It's all part of an illusion, an identity that we have created for ourselves, a mask to survive, in order to receive some sort of validation. And then we have another crash, because eventually what we are growing into is we are moving through a lot of cycles of death and rebirth, of moving through a lot of dark nights of the soul, a lot of moving through a lot of pain and failure and loss and sacrifice. This is the part of something bigger, the third initiation. Now we are through that we can also move further and deeper into the third and then into the fourth archetype. The third is that of the lover. The lover, for us, of course, it really relates to our romantic relationships and opening up to sensitivity and to intimacy. And for a lot of men, this is also kind of like a thing that is kind of like somewhat like, wow, way too far for my bacho. And this is also not an easy thing, especially when we have hardened ourselves with a lot of our armors of the things that we have experienced. Loss, abandonment, rejection, and a lot of that can really influence how we open up to the lover archetype. It's the poetic philosopher who sees that, wait a minute, maybe I am not just an isolated drop of water, but I'm part of the ocean. As a drop of water, I make the ocean. Everything is somewhat connected all around me. And through that, this is really what's happening up later in life. But we also recognize, you know, from the early ages in life, we already start to see, wait a minute, you know, the way how I'm being spoon-fed by the school system, the social structure, the work environment of having a job and having this and paying taxes and all of that, you know, this kind of system that I'm programmed to be in, it's false. It's not working. It's not here for our human nature. It's a 2 + 2 is 4 system. Everything is like rigid. You know, it's supposed to be for us to live in a very linear, structured, systemized and automatic way of you wake up in the morning, you do the job, you come home, you find yourself in a bit of distraction and you repeat the whole cycle for the rest of your life until you can go and enjoy your retirement when pretty soon you have reached the age of 70 years old. With nothing left of a lot of regrets of all the things that we should have done, that we felt called to do. But here's the thing. For those who are connected more with the evolution of the soul, realize the soul doesn't operate in a 2 + 2 is 4 system. It doesn't want to live in a system of predictability and systems and structure. No, it needs to flow. It needs to do things. There's another kind of elements to the evolution of the soul. It's not linear, it's multi-dimensional. And this is the whole thing. Things that are multi-dimensional, it comes in our existence as a way to show something, of something that does not longer belong to us, that was part of the old paradigm. And for those really connected with the last archetype, the archetype of the magician, they are opening up to a very old, ancient wisdom. A very old, ancient wisdom that perhaps it was feared. It terrified the structured order. The structured order of the many global religions that had to get rid of these free-flowing, soul-searching people living and connected with the land, with the nature, with the elements, with the sun, the water, the earth, the fire. They saw each element representing different purpose for us to speak with something and to listen to something much greater than themselves. For that, this was the most terrifying. For the structured order, it was the most terrifying, because then we will be independent, we will be sovereign. We will be sovereign because we will be standing on our own feet. And of course, this was not allowed. So for all the wisdom seekers, the shamanic archetypes, the seers, the medicine men and women from our indigenous tribal communities, and maybe even way before that, they already knew something, and they were able to see through the veil of the illusions of the old systems that is right now here very, very dominant. You know, the control systems. But underneath that, especially here on this land of our northwest European heritage, there is a spiritual graveyard. It didn't die, it is still here, but it is here to be revived. It's coming back alive. It is waking things up in our DNA through the different kind of initiation periods that we have, through the many dark nights of the soul, through the times of where we feel we are somewhat in our shadow aspect. This shadow aspect is here, of course, to become detached from the old paradigm, the old system, because it wants to bring up certain beliefs, emotions, thought patterns that were indoctrinated by the way we grow up, by our upbringers, the school systems, our work environments, and everything we have done until this point. It is here to wake us up from that. So for sure we see like, okay, interesting, another crisis. I lose a job, I lose income stability, I lose this, I lose that. I live as a lone wolf, isolated from the world around me. And if I participate, if I see people around me, I'm like, I am the only one here. What's happening here, you know? So this is kind of how it feels like. And it feels like the magician part, it lives a very lonely, isolated path in one way or another. He is able to relate to a lot of people, but the majority of people is unable to relate to him because of the knowledge, the wisdom he is experiencing and gathering along the way. And maybe for him the only way to express that is to talk into a camera, until he meets other like-minded peers who also feel like a lone wolf, and all the different lone wolf become a pack of wolf and run together as a soul tribe. And this is the individual's initiatory moments we go through and phases we go through throughout our life, so eventually we connect and we form our own soul tribe. And that's exactly here what I'm bringing and here to do, is to join a pack of wolves, of men who feel like, wait a minute, you know, I connected with the warrior archetype, I connected with the king, I had beautiful, romantic, intimate relationships. I'm still opening up, and I'm continuing to open up to that. It's not one thing like, okay, I had a relationship one time and we had, you know, some intimacy here and there, but you know, there's a whole deeper aspect to that that is also here to reawaken. You know, think about the magician men. They were the Sufi poets and the Buddhist monks and the shamans of the tribal communities. They were initiated through opening up their sensitivities. Their sensitivities and awareness and feeling and sensing and connecting with different kind of energies that they were all part of, to really to evolve and heal and connect with different worlds, realms, to bring the spiritual dimensions with the physical, as a magician, as an alchemist. And this is not about hustle, grind, linear way of thinking and all of that. This is recognizing that the soul moves in a very unstructured way and is learning to flow like that as water, finding the path of the least resistance, recognizing, seeing, bringing awareness that the ego has resistance. The ego clings on to the past, and we're here to learn to let go of the past. Because the ego, part of the survival mind, survival mechanism, is here to keep you safe, secure. But the soul can't evolve when it's clinging on to the past and wants to stay safe and secure. So if we feel we are being guidance to move into a different kind of path that is unfamiliar with that, recognize that's the soul speaking to you. If the mind speaks to you like, you know what, I've got a lifetime of experiences and skill sets and titles and job descriptions, and I've got a CV from here until Tokyo, why I can't find a job with that? Recognize that's the ego talking to you, pulling you back into the structured matrix, and we are here to move a little bit outside, because your whole life you already have felt you are a misfit, you are the lone wolf, you are the black sheep of the family, you are being ridiculed. Why can't you be like us? Even your family members, you know, when you are having family dinners, it's a massive confrontation, because you see how they are living their life according to what they think is best for them. But then you're there and you are on a completely different path. It's always a confrontation. And for us, this is the most important aspect for us to heal as magician men, is to disconnect from that, is that it's not longer affecting us. But here's the thing, you know, especially our family members are always confronting us in the most intense way, because we always still have a loyalty. We continue to have a loyalty of where we came from, because we always felt, the inner child always felt, you know, I always needed their approval and validation as a child. And we all continue to have that, even when you are moving through your 40s and even older. We all have this inner child of, I still somewhat need this validation. Until we completely become somewhat healed from that, it's a big job to do. Then eventually we start to say, I live my life in my way, and that's the only way. And this is the most powerful initiations we can go through. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Please drop a comment below, and how you are going through this process of stepping into your authority, into your sovereignty. And yeah, let's start off the conversation. And if you recognize yourself as a lone wolf, the space is here for you to join the pack of wolf. Anyway, hope that was helpful. See you in one of my next videos. Take care for now. Bye bye.